And you're live.
Aloha! Snack bar. It's the one, the only Senor Silverback, coming to you on another edition of Rogue Money Radio with the illustrious sidekick, the man who flies with me, my main wingman over here, the denizen of the airways, CJ himself. CJ, what's up, buddy? CJ has muted himself again.
It's Friday. The weekend is
CJ.
here.
Oh, there you are.
It's Friday. The weekend is here. It's time to relax, enjoy family, friends, and all that.
Yes, it is time to relax and enjoy family and friends. And when you get a chance, check out roguemoney.net. Follow us on Twitter at The Rogue Money and check out the Rogue Money Facebook page. With that being said, a special announcement to all of you that are out there. Rogue Money version 4.0 is going live this coming week. I've seen the templates. I've seen the beta of the new website. It is going to be sick. And with our new simulcasting, we will be simulcasting on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Livewire, Periscope. I mean, you name it. We're going to be on every platform all at once. And, of course, the website itself. So you don't need to be on YouTube. You can go right to Rogue Money and watch us live as we simulcast to all mediums everywhere. Because we're taking over, CJ. We're the new media, buddy.
We're taking over. The world is ours. You know, the whole MSM is just completely dead right now. The future is ours, V.
It is ours. And the cat food eating Ultimedia, who is scaring people by selling them cat food and SWAT team dreams, their days are numbered as well as gravitas and balance, as well as truth, is injected back into the conversation, CJ.
Absolutely.
So what's on the show today, man? We got a special guest coming on later?
Yeah, we have Eric coming on later on from TradCatKnight. Mm-hmm. And Eric has a phenomenal YouTube radio presence. You know, he drops a lot of truth in regards to religion as it relates to
Catholicism, traditional Catholicism, I think it is.
Yeah. And, you know, I had a favorite quote not too long ago, V, and one of my friends sent it to me. It's like, you know, going to church on Sunday no more makes you a religious figure than working in your garage on Sunday makes you a mechanic.
Right, exactly. Absolutely correct. So
yeah, because he drops some serious truth. I mean, you know, if you think about, you know, organized religion, and I understand and respect people that go to that, and I get it. There's a lot of community support and everything, but now in these times, you have to be very aware of false prophets, right?
Oh my God! Well, that's spelled PROFITS, prophets, false prophets, because that's what they're trying to do, man. They're trying to make a profit off of you.
They're trying to make a profit, and more importantly, V, that in terms of the coffers, the organized religion, is that they take their messaging from the higher ups and they cascade it down to the congregation. And you have to be very careful. You have to be very careful as far as, you know, what you open your mind to, what we talk about this a lot, the belief system, right? Your belief system. And if you look today in terms of the Pope and some of his ideas in terms of the Catholics and their, I'm not going to bash him. I don't think that's the right thing to do, but I'm going to challenge you, you know, because a lot of the things that he's talking about, he's interpreting the Bible for himself, not necessarily based upon religion in general, more so based upon his beliefs.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely correct. And that's the most dangerous aspect of this whole entire thing, is that people need to understand what the difference is, and people need to know that, you know, you have to be more spiritual in this world rather than being religious. Religion is boring, man. It's just, I mean, you look at the Latin word for religion, CJ. It actually means to bind. It means to tie up. And you know, you don't want to be some closed-minded religious nut job. I've been around those in my life, and I'm just like, it's just not fun.
Well, yeah, I've been involved with organized religion, and that's why I'm always hesitant about. Yeah. I get it. You know, I have a sister that went through cancer, and I was able to see firsthand what the church did in terms of being there for the family and supporting. the priest coming to the doctor's appointments and everything. So I completely get it. I really do. But at the same time, I think that we need to respect that individuals have a right to their own connection with God and their spiritual system, that
Sure.
we don't have to force everyone into organized religion.
Right, exactly. And I think, I think there's a couple of things. I think, when I was on Eric's show, I talked about the decentralization of everything, and the decentralization and the certain things that are ripe for disruption. And I talked about different sectors in the economy, and I said banking is going to be one of the next big things that are ripe for disruption. I mean, it wasn't long ago that you'd have to go get a business loan and get a business plan together, then go beg a loan officer for a loan at a local bank. You ain't got to do that. Now you got a bright idea, go crowdfund it. Go
Bingo.
crowdfund. Bingo. So now we're eliminating the banks. We're eliminating governments by using to barter with precious metals and or utilizing Bitcoin to transact or any other types of cryptocurrencies. Your way of silently protesting and saying, look, I'm not going to be a part of your matrix. I'm not going to be part of your system. So when you look at the next thing that's going to be disrupted, I believe it's going to be organized religion, dude. People are sick of it. There's so much corruption left and right. I mean, when you look at the Benny Flynn's of this world, running around claiming miracles and not a single person has been healed of anything. And he's just fleecing the public, dirty scumbag. I slap the guy's face if I see him. It's just
you see it everywhere.
Yeah, they make me want to vomit, man. So
yeah, you see it everywhere, not only from the aspect that you just told about in terms of the corruption, but in terms of the fact that a lot of these priests, a lot of these fathers and everything, they continue or they don't accept the fact that religion in a whole, in terms of the pedophilia and the things that exist out there, these are real things, right?
Yeah.
These things that exist. And until they own that accountability and repair and fix, I mean, religion itself is a good thing, as far as your relationship with God, but it doesn't have to be an organized religion. It can be a personal thing.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the decentralization of it. I think there's going to be a move to go back to individual, reflections, as well as smaller group meetings, as well as various different types of online groups, social media groups, and things of that sort. I think it's changing, man.
Yeah, it's changing, and I think that the wave that's happening right now, and trust me, because I hear from a lot of my friends that are in different religious groups, that the congregation is waking up. They are starting to understand that the message is coming down from the higher ups may not be the message that you want to share with your congregation. And the reason I got turned off around organization and the religious factor is that I got tired of going there and sitting in the pews, and all you hear about is how much of a sinners are, that we don't deserve God's love, we don't do this. And I know we're going really deep here, and I had a lot of indifference with that. I'm like, why does sometimes religion have to be so negative? Like that. Have you witnessed that yourself?
Yeah, man. You know what it is, man. I look at what Christianity started off with, and what's the bastardized Western version that we see pushed out to the entire stage, and religion as a whole, as it is pushed out to the entire stage today. It truly is the opiate of the masses. It truly is. It's when you talk to most quote unquote religious people, they're some of the most they're not active in politics. If Lucifer himself becomes president of the United States, then it is God's will, and I will sit here and read my Bible and do nothing. Like, dude, I'm listening to, I think, a buddy of mine who one of my very good friends, one of my best buddies. He was in ministry for quite a long time. He left, and he was burnt out. The guy spent over 11 years in ministry, trying to evangelize in one of the toughest areas in freaking New York. And at the end of the day, they just gave him a pat on the back. Here you go. Have a nice day. And the guy's like totally burnt out. And then, and he's like a red-blooded dude. And you have some Christian ministers out there saying like, well, if it's all God's will, and if a robber were to break into my house and rape my wife and daughter, I would just sit there and I would just pray for them. I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? I mean, this is the kind of, I mean, what the heck is going on? I mean, you know, you could be religious, you could be a Christian, but don't check your brain in at the door, man. You know?
Yeah, and to understand that, V, is that you look at the last several years and the attack on the church's ability to talk about political activity and
Anything.
the federal
Silence.
government wanting to crack down on that.
Right.
And Trump is coming forth, and I don't want to sound like I've seen some of the comments in our posts, why are you such an advocate of Trump and why are you doing this? So to those
because I'm brainwashed, that's why.
Well, no, I'm not brainwashed, but what's the alternative? What's the alternative? Do you want Hillary Clinton sitting in the Oval Office right now?
Yeah, well, here's a simple answer. He's not a globalist. Is he perfect? Hell no. No one's saying that he is. He's not a globalist swine. Okay, and anybody who says, "Oh, he's a globalist, he's controlled out," you don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry. Bottom line, punto final. That's it.
Yes.
With that,
so you see Trump here at the prayers, and I apologize, I don't know the official name, the prayers breakfast, and and he's sitting there telling them that, listen, I'm going to remove the barriers that allow you to talk about political speech. I'm not going to threaten you with your nonprofit status that if you enter into the era of talking about religion. So again, I'm just again, I think that this is a great time for the awakening that's happening, not only on the political side, but also in the beliefs. And I think there's no other person here to help us through that conversation than Eric from TradCatKnight. So welcome, Eric.
Hey, gentlemen, how are you guys doing today? Glad to be aboard the mothership, if you will. I had to run and get myself a nice little lemon ginger tea on this 15-degree day.
Nice.
And get settled down. Tomorrow it's supposed to be 55, so we can get in board shorts tomorrow. It's a little snow today, a little sun and surf tomorrow, I guess.
Eric, where are you, man? Where in the country are you?
I'm in the Ohio Valley. Yeah, I've lived all over. Yeah, I grew up actually on the Jersey Shore. East Coast boy.
Nice.
Did school out here in the Ohio Valley area. I got a business degree, got an MBA actually. Was an ex-businessman myself on the retail side. I've lived all over though. Chicago, spent some time in Chicago, Raleigh, North Carolina, and then ultimately coming to this apostolate and kind of just staying grounded here in the Ohio Valley area and kind of just moving forward from here. But yeah, lots going on in the world, right? To talk about. Goodness. Dude,
tremendous amount of things. Hey, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience so they know who you are, your YouTube channel, your website. I mean, you are one of the heavy hitters in the Catholic community, man. So why don't you explain that? And I know later on you're going to be talking about the infiltration of the Catholic Church, this, that, and the other, and all the other political topics that are on the radar. I mean, there's so much things to talk about. So, Eric, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, grounded in terms of a business background, ex-athlete, played basketball, almost played semi-professionally over in Europe, believe it or not. So I've always kind of prided myself on that, outside of just having the business degree. I found that in terms of leadership, I actually learned more on a basketball court, I would say, kind of rubbing shoulders and putting together a team and trying to win an ultimate goal, I guess you could say, as opposed to sitting in a classroom. Not that it's not good, but I found that balance tremendously works. But in terms of what we do with this apostolate, TradCatKnight is a top 20,000 website in the world. We are the #1 ranked traditional Catholic website out there. And for those who don't understand, there's a big crisis in the church. This is the biggest crisis the church has ever known. There's been crises before in the past, such as the Arian crisis way back in the early centuries, where almost 9 out of every 10 bishops was promoting heresy. And for the sake of your show, I realize that most of your guests are probably not Catholic, so I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I can only teach from a Catholic perspective. Bottom line is with this crisis, there's an advent literally of a new religion called the Novus Ordo religion, which ties in with the New World Order. It's the New World Order's religion. Pope Paul VI called it the cult of man. That's literally how he labeled this Second Vatican Council, which came about in the early 60s. And so real Catholics, they spotted this. They spotted this right away. One of them being Archbishop Lefebvre, who kind of called out the Vatican during his time. He was falsely excommunicated at one point. It truly holds no validity in our estimation. But the bottom line is there's a lot of Catholics waking up on that line of things. As a matter of fact, this past week, just more and more people emailing me like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize just how bad this was, because you got Francis just going Looney Tunes right now. I mean,
Yeah.
he's just so far. I mean, he's not even left. I mean, he's awful left. I mean, he's not even in the ballpark of left.
Dude, he's got full blown Mao on us.
Yeah. And when I had you on my show last, we talked about that. I mean, he literally said in this past 3 or 4 months, he thinks communists makes the best Christians. Okay, so he's a full-blown socialist / Marxist. I don't believe he's a Marxist. I think he's a little bit more toned down. It's socialism. And that in the end game, by the way, from my research and study, because that's kind of like my forte. It's more the prophetic side of things. It's like, how do all these things tie together from a Catholic eschatology standpoint? And that's what the New World Order is, essentially, when we're talking mark of the beast and going digital economy and getting everyone, into this Luciferian initiation, which is their plan, by the way. It's a socialist structure. So I was one of the first to warn about this whole terminology coming out of the Vatican called sharing. And it sounds very nice and wonderful, but we all know what that is in the end. And it's socialism is what it is. Right. So yeah, that's what I do. Yeah, you can visit TradCatKnight.blogspot.com. Again, I'm putting out a lot of information. I mean, like 15 blogs a day, and I try to cover both sides of things, both what's going on in the church, but then outside of it, whether it's economically, whether it's on health. I mean, I try to follow that. Even we try to rise up against this culture of death, which I'm sure you guys have talked about on your show. Yeah. I mean, we're being poisoned, our water supply, our food supply, our air supply. We're surrounded by abortionists, euthanasia, assisted suicide, organ harvesting. I mean, you name it. We're being pressed to fight into action. And that's what my call is. I'm certainly no pacifist. We kind of drawn our line in the sand and saying, enough's enough. If they're going to come for us, they're going to come for us, and we're going to go down fighting.
Yep, absolutely, man. Absolutely correct. What are some of the things that are on your radar, man, that you want to touch base on?
Well, I would just like to get across, I guess, a few things. We can talk about the message of Fatima, which is pretty important. Ever since this
I've been fascinated about that.
Yeah, and when I go on radio shows, I try to touch base with my non-Catholic listeners just to get them to have at least a basic understanding of it. And basically, the Blessed Virgin Mary at approved sources, and it has to go through a process in the Catholic Church. Most of these supposed visionaries or seers these days, they're false. I would argue maybe 1 out of 1,000 are actually authentic. But she's been warning of this satanic infiltration of the church actually for centuries now. I mean, going back to the 17th century in Quito, Ecuador, we had La Salette, France, 1846, and then Fatima, of course. But the prevailing theme there is, she basically came and was warning the world. And it wasn't just for churchmen, not just necessarily for Catholics, it's for the world. And she said, we're headed off the Christian path. People better turn back to God. Otherwise, you're ultimately going to land in the lap of the Antichrist. Mm-hmm. And, so she warned about all the modest fashions which were going on. She took these 3 kids, the 3 seers, actually into hell. Literally, they came out after a minute and wanted nothing to do with it. They saw how many souls were going into hell. They kind of freaked out and kind of promulgated their conversion. But then, the interesting thing was talking about Russia and how Russia was so vital for the restoration of Christendom. I had V on my show today, and we were talking about the whole refugee crisis.
Yeah.
I mean, goodness. I mean, Christian Europe is being imploded. There is a plan in place, folks, for Islam to literally take over Rome by the year 2025. This is not even conspiratorial. They have it in their own writings.
Yeah. They're not even hiding it anymore, bro.
Yeah, and they're coming right in our face. And as V mentioned today, a lot of Europeans, even obviously non-Catholics as well, they're rising up against their own governments. They don't want it anymore. The Germans, the Polish, we just have Belgium coming out today, talking about how they're being overrun by Islam. And so this actually ties in with Catholic prophecy. There's going to be massive, frightful clashes in Europe that are just, we're going to sit there on the nightly news and our jaws are just going to drop. It's how bad it's going to get, because ultimately people will have to stand up. The globalists want their refugee program to go full swing. And obviously people who are awakened, we'll just label them as that, don't want that. And so it's a buildup ultimately. But Russia is the piece that everyone has to pay attention to. We have right now churchmen these wayward popes and wayward churchmen now trying to sell it to us and use car salesman fashion that the UN is going to save the day. You know, they're going to be the promoters of the peace. When anyone knows and studied this New World Order, knows how intricately involved they are with globalism. And ultimately, in my opinion, I think this Antichrist is going to be over the UN eventually. We can, either discuss that later for a topic for another time. But Russia was pivotal. It needed to be consecrated to the Blessed Virgin Mary in a kind of formal act, if you will. And once it is done, basically, it kind of will turn the tides against the New World Order. It'll be kind of like the backbone to basically crushing Islam and the New World Order in Europe. And the Russian Empire. Yeah, at a certain point, it's kind of like, okay, when does Putin just say, okay, enough's enough? And that's what was predicted at Fatima, by the way, that Russia would eventually, lash out. I mean, at a certain point, they're going to lash out, and they're going to say enough's enough. And she said various nations would be annihilated. She didn't mention any specific ones. But, listen, V and I might disagree on Trump a little bit. I'm not necessarily on the Trump train per se, but who can argue that he's not the lesser of two evils between him and just the outright Satanist Clinton. So within the traditional Catholic community, it's balanced. I would say more people are behind Trump. I'm kind of like still kind of waiting to see how things develop. Certainly a lot of great signs. He's been very proactive as of late. A lot of good executive orders defunding international Planned Parenthood. So obviously he's battling the culture of death, at least at this point. But the bottom line, I think the key is to really pay attention to that Ukraine-Russia border, and that's exactly what Father Malachi warned about, because he read the Third Secret of Fatima.
That's Malachi Martin, right?
Yeah, for those, good, if you got a little time this weekend, when I was on SGT Report with Sean a week or so ago, or a few weeks ago, whenever it was, I mentioned that, and people seem to take it up and watch it. It's on Netflix right now. So I know many of you got Netflix. You can go to Netflix, type in "Hostage to the Devil," and it goes through. Yeah, it goes through. Yeah, it goes through his story.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it goes through his story, and basically it shows the battle between Satan and Christ, and he was the Roman Catholic's chief exorcist, and it shows him talking about exorcism, talking about how our countries and the countries of the world are in this spiritual battle, if you will. But ultimately, he was working on his last exorcist case, and things got really freaky. And as the story goes, there was an ex-CIA guy who's a traditional Catholic. His name eludes me right now. I'm trying to get him on my radio show, actually, who came out. He was a close friend of Malachi Martin. He said Malachi Martin was essentially the last one to call him before he died. He literally called him after he fell off of this ladder. He was going to reach for a book or something. And Malachi Martin told him on the phone that something unseen pushed him off of the ladder. And this was while he was working on this one exorcist case, which was actually new news to me. I didn't realize that. I knew his death was suspect, but that's a kind of intimate detail there that this particular ex-CIA guy revealed to the world. So yeah, if you get a chance, look at it. It's an hour. It's pretty intense, and goes into spiritual warfare. But
wow, didn't he write that book, A Windswept House, where he was warning about the infiltration of Luciferians into the Vatican?
Yeah, there's no question about it. Shortly before the Second Vatican Council, he gives his testimony to how there was an actual formal Luciferian initiation done, not only in and around Rome, but there was one done in Columbia, South Carolina, as well, coincidentally, by a group of prelates in the church. And who can really argue it today? Seeing all of the pedophilia crisis that we're seeing in the church, largely attributed to these Luciferians. Again, I reported today, this past week, I mentioned it again when V came on, another mainstream article came out down there in Australia, alleged 4,000 sex abuse people who have come out over the past few years indicating that they were abused, and the statistics show since 1950, 1 out of every 10 priests have been involved. And so there's no doubt that we've been run over, and this has been a prevailing theme in a lot of these approved messages by the Blessed Virgin Mary, where she's basically warning and scolding people, and it's not a nice message to churchmen. I mean, she's really laying into your modern day Catholic priest, saying how worldly you are, you're not helping the poor enough, you're distracted too much, too involved, with just all the distractions of life, basically, and not doing what you should be doing as a priest. And it's kind of rattles the cage a little bit. And just kind of as a side note too, we're at a point right now, V, where and kind of getting into debates with your modern day kind of Catholic bishop who doesn't see that they're literally following a new religion. I've had high ranking prelates and cardinals and bishops in the church block me on Twitter. The semi-official publication in Rome called La Observatore Romano has blocked me. I mean, they don't want to deal with me anymore. And so when we kind of break news, I know the Vatican and Rome's watching what we're putting out, as a leader in the kind of the traditional Catholic world, if you will. So, but I got my own radio show too. I bring on guests who predominantly aren't Catholic. I mean, we break it down. I love absorbing like a sponge, things V has to say. And, there's just so much going on in the world today. I mean, it's truly amazing to see. But I encourage you all, outside of Father Malachi Martin, there's some other sources if you're interested in kind of investigating for yourself this infiltration of the church. There was Archbishop Lefebvre, who I mentioned. He founded a group called the Society of St. Pius X, a group of traditional Catholics who are basically, resisting Rome, at least up until this point. We hope they don't cave in. Father Paul Kramer, who's another notable priest who's an expert on Fatima. He's actually now in Ireland. Father Gruner. But then there's some references, some books that will be very eye-opening for you. Okay, there's a book called AA 1025. It's called Memoirs of an Anti-Apostle. And essentially what happened, there was a car accident, and this one nurse came upon this car wreckage, and the individual apparently had died. Well, she was like going through his stuff when they brought him back to the hospital, trying to save his life. And he had all his memoirs there, and he was a communist, and he was a high-ranking prelate in the Catholic Church. Okay, so he was a collar, and he was literally a communist infiltrator, and it divulges everything. It goes into Vatican II. It talks about their plans for Vatican III, where they want to create a marriage between Marxism and Catholicism. And we know as Catholics,
that's here already. I mean, you got Francis, the Jesuit plant.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And so another reference too is School of Darkness. There's a lady by the name of Bella Dodd. She actually was the head of the Communist Party here in America. She actually converted to Catholicism. Then she blew the horn on everything. I don't know how she survived, but she literally gave her testimony that over 1,000 communist infiltrators were released into the church, back in the 20s and 30s, 30 years before Vatican II. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist. Any of you worked in the business world, you start at the bottom. You end up working your way up. So guess where these Marxists are now? They're in the upper echelons of the church.
Yeah.
And then lastly, there's another book called Alta Vendita. It's basically a blueprint for the Freemasonic satanic subversion of the Catholic Church. Another good reference material for you. So just got to kind of distinguish that, because there's a lot of people who are, they're confused. A lot of Catholics who are even confused, that are like trying to figure this thing out. And I'm just trying to do my best to cover current events from a traditional Catholic perspective, but I'm right there with you, V. There's a growing number of us who don't even hold Francis as the true Pope. There are, in church history, there are 50 anti-popes, and they are essentially imposter popes. They're not the actual real Pope. And this kind of ties in with some prophecy. It actually ties in with Fatima and some other areas. But basically, we hold that Benedict XVI was forced out, and that ultimately he is going to flee Rome here with some cardinals. But Francis is just, I mean, goodness, I could truly go on. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you saw this. This actually hit mainstream news. People in Rome were actually putting up these anti-Pope Francis posters all over Rome. They were basically, giving it to him. Yeah, I mean, so the people in Rome, are even waking up. But the bottom line is they're en route to this formalized one world religion that's warned about from our perspective in the apocalypse. And we believe those times to be very close. But yeah, a lot going on, certainly with our buddy Francis.
Yeah, I mean, this guy was he was very dirty to begin with. I've heard a lot of accounts of him and what he was involved with in Argentina was very, very interesting to say the least, and I'm being very kind there. From everything from money laundering to oh my God, I mean, all sorts of cover this guy was running. It's unreal. And now he's the Pope. This communist, Luciferian in disguise. It's unreal, man.
Yeah, I'm not shy when I say it. I think he's a high-ranking 33rd degree Freemason.
Yeah.
He's given a lot of pictures have leaked over his time. There's a famous one in a subway there where he's giving the Marxist Masonic hidden hand where, I mean, you look back and you see all of the old, Marxists and Masons, they all have this hidden hand sign where they kind of conceal it underneath their breast, going in between their jacket.
Sure.
And he was letting the world know, who he is. When he came here to America in his speech out there in Philadelphia, he was giving that AOK sign, which is literally a symbol to reference your allegiance to the beast. It's the sign of man. Right. And so, in his doctrine, again, it's Freemasonic in doctrine, but then, as you mentioned down there in Argentina, he's a heavy supporter of liberation theology. It leaked out even while he was a cardinal. He supported sodomite marriage, and that's basically the next thing on the agenda. So don't be surprised when you see, women priests, which has been condemned by the church. Don't be surprised to see, just sodomy in general just being normalized. I mean, we're en route to it, but I mean, they're actually going to try to create doctrines out of this. And what was also interesting too, and I'm sure you guys at least poked your head into this with the Super Bowl and all that. He actually came out and said, and it shouldn't surprise anyone, he said at this point that the Super Bowl is a new sign of peace for the world. And, as a Catholic, of course,
wow.
Yeah. So we got Satanic Gaga at halftime with her pentagrams and Masonic checkerboards and all throwing up all her hand signs. This is, our sign of peace. So we're talking about a complete perversion, folks, on all levels. When they start talking about love, it's not love. When they talk about peace, like John Lennon peace, it's not true peace that the Catholic Church has, taught. I mean, essentially, they're building a new Tower of Babel. And they're trying to elevate God, or they're trying to elevate man into godlike status without going through Christ as a savior, without the knowing and understanding that we need grace, as Christians, and they're going to abolish that eventually. So that was just another little tidbit there that Francis has come out and said that has really irked a lot of Catholics these days. And then just in this past 48 hours, the Vatican has actually invited this guy, Dr. Ehrlich, to the Vatican. He's pro-abortion. Get this, he's pro-abortion. He's one of the leading global depopulation experts, quote unquote.
That's a perfect fit.
Yeah, exactly. And so they're inviting him into the Vatican, and everyone's like, really? I mean, they're not even trying to hide it anymore, folks.
No,
I mean, listen, it's right in our face.
I just want Francis to come out and say, "Hey, hail Satan," and run back inside. That's what we're waiting for at this point.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, V, is as funny as that sounds, I mean, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he did. But there's actually a long-awaited prophecy in the Catholic Church that I've been talking about. Essentially in Rome, what's going to happen is they're going to abolish the 7 sacraments, and they're going to implant this New Age religion. They're going to set up this mark of the beast, which is a Luciferian initiation. And they're, like I said, Rome will lose the faith and become the seat of Antichrist. Our Lady warned in 1846 on that, La Salette. But there's a long way to prophecy that suggests that an anti-pope would cause this formal schism in the church, where it would literally schism from the faith. And he actually came out in the past 3 months and said, I might be the one to do that.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, he said that. He admitted.
Wow.
He said, well, I might be the one to do that. I mean, come on, really, folks? I mean, and I get really tired. Listen, I get really tired, and I probably debate more quote-unquote Catholics that, than I go out and people who identify as Christians at this point, because these people just don't want to see it. As Catholics, we have this thing called obedience, right? Where we should be obedient to a priest or a bishop or even the Pope. But folks, Catholic teaching is this: when a churchman, even a Pope, goes astray and he's no longer following the faith, you start doing what a husband would do to their cranky old wife when you're trying to watch the ball game and she's, running her mouth about getting the vacuum going. It goes in one ear and out the other. We're not listening to them. We're not following them. So that's what church teaching is. The church doesn't teach false obedience. So, and sadly, that's the situation we have. So there's a very I hate to almost label it nasty clash, but between those who are following Vatican II and those, who are essentially are not. And like I said, from the traditional side, we're the leader in the industry, so I get attacked all the time, and I've got probably more haters, than people, than follow. But it's all good. It's all part of the game and the process. But as we continue, yeah.
Let me ask you this, man. The Vatican Bank. What do you know about them? I know I haven't paid much attention to them. They've been off my radar for a little while, but I know like every sort of slimy undertaking. I mean, there seems to be some influence there from that angle. What do you know about those guys?
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself an expert on it. There was one pope who back in the 70s, it seemed like was going to have the intention to abolish Vatican II and to rid these kind of mobsters and these Rothschild linked people who are a part of the Vatican Bank. And it seemed like he was getting ready to make strategic moves. And guess what happened to him?
He got killed.
He was poisoned. And what's interesting to note, I mean, Freemasons and just the occult in general, I mean, they're highly symbolic with their numbers. He died 33 days after he started his pontificate, 33rd degree Freemason, right. Of course. Okay, so they were sending a message like, hey, don't mess with our program. We're going to keep moving in this direction. But yeah, I mean, listen, there seems to be like this democratic link, between Soros and the Rothschilds type and Francis and Clinton. Even there's been other traditional Catholic websites who've kind of delved into it a little bit more there, but there seems to be kind of an alliance there.
Yeah, that's the pedo link, man. That's the pedo link. That's the narco trafficking. That's the human trafficking. That's the subversion, the graft, the NGOs that are going out there, and the color revolutions. Dirty players, man. Real dirty.
Yeah, and there's only so much more, that God's going to take, on a spiritual level. I mean, ultimately, we believe that there is going to be some very serious events happening from a chastisement point of view, and so ultimately, Rome is going to get it, and they've been getting some pretty significant earthquakes out in that area. For those who've been paying attention to, a lot of the latest earth changes going on in the world, but I think ultimately Rome is going to be brought to its knees and ultimately destroyed. But yeah, a lot going on. We got culture of death we cover. Obviously, we're trying to alert people to the formation of this one world religion. Now, we talk about this, I think at times, V, but I just kind of wanted to state for people to kind of think a little bit more deeply when we're talking about, fear mongering in the media, because sometimes I get labeled a fear monger, and that's not really what I'm trying to do. I put out the information that websites will use, and then I try to help people think a little bit more deeper, pull back another layer. Now, in order for this one world religion to come about, all right, their ultimate aim is to try to formalize this one world religion where it will be said, Catholics are equal to Buddhists and atheists and whatever religion you are. You worship Doritos, whatever religion you are.
Certain days I worship Doritos. I'm not going to lie.
And so, without being too sarcastic there, I ask people to look at the news, don't be fearful of it. But as it relates to the war on terror, they're using that as a backdrop to solidify the police state, to take away more of our, liberties and freedoms, but also to break down that barrier of it's just Catholic alone. And again, I can only speak from a Catholic perspective. We believe that true unity exists in the church, and it really doesn't exist outside of it. But when you break it down and they're kind of building this false Tower of Babel type of situation, we know what happened in the Old Testament with the old Tower of Babel. I mean, that's going to happen all over again. And I think it's the European Parliament, which their structure is actually made after the Tower of Babel. I don't know if you've ever seen that structure in Europe. I mean, it literally, it talks about, Europe being one tongue, one voice. And that's, God's plan is truly to have nations. It's not to be a hodgepodge, conglomerate of, a globalist enterprise. Or as Pope Benedict the 15th warned about before Vatican II, he called this one world socialist republic an absolute reign of terror, unseen before. Okay, that's when the popes were actually following the Catholic faith. The bottom line is that's not God's plan. For globalism is not God's plan at all. There's a reason why the nations are broken down as such. But even with like World War III, the propaganda with that, because just in the past 48 hours, we got China talking about how they're, they've got their laser eyesights on bases spread out all over the world, wherever U.S. bases are. Then you got North Korea talking about how they're going to like nuke the whole West Coast. And all this, folks, the reason why they're doing that is because ultimately they want people to succumb to that fear and to embrace this new religion to come and get behind the notion, yeah, we all just got to get along. And you see this propaganda in the Olympics, the Super Bowl, like, hey, let's just all, get along and push aside these, doctrinal issues, which to us as a Catholic, we can't do, unfortunately. But I just kind of ask people to pay attention to that, because that's going to be amped up more and more, in my opinion. And this whole new world order in general, again, from a Catholic perspective, it should be spiritually based. I mean, we should have unity in Christ. I mean, he willed for us to be of one heart, one mind, and one body. I mean, we teach in the Catholic Church. It's the church that he founded, so we find unity in that. But the New World Order, what they're pitching and what's been coming out of the Pope's mouth is everything is economic. Everything's on that surface level, if you will, and that's not how you're going to have some sort of unity in the world, right? I mean,
right.
You simply just can't do it. I'm sorry, I'm rambling here.
No,
Eric,
you're right. CJ has a question.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, this is CJ. So I have a question for you in terms of the Gotthard, the Swiss, opening, the satanic ritual of the tunnel, right? Was that the opening battle of good versus evil? I mean, we may need a whole other show to talk about this, but obviously you probably have seen the ritual, the videos and everything. What the heck was that all about?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think that was kind of a coming out party for them. I think you're going to see more events like that as we progress through 2017. I mean, take a look, CJ, at what's been happening this past year in this country. We're seeing these Baphomets being put up in, Detroit, Oklahoma City. I think there was another one in California, another one up there in Connecticut or New Hampshire. And the ultimate game plan, at least according to Albert Pike, anyone who studied his 3 world wars, and he was a 33rd degree Freemason, high-ranking Luciferian, the plan is ultimately to get people so destitute after everything does collapse that they will embrace a new Messiah figure, to embrace the Luciferian doctrine, he says, which is going to be that New Age religion that I talked about, the self-realization program that, man can evolve and be a god without, the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, which is nonsense. So that's what I've been warning people, by the way, too, is if you want to see what's going to come out of the Vatican here pretty soon, they're going to start attacking the doctrine of original sin, that we're all born, we're all okay, which, I mean, pretty much every Christian, I don't know of any, denomination of Christian that denies original sin, but that's literally what's going to be coming out of the Vatican soon. But yeah, CJ, to hit your point, I mean, listen, there's been traditional Catholics to do protests outside of these, black masses, these satanic black masses that they're doing. And it's just going to become more and more prevalent. I mean, the darkness is truly kind of overtaking. And if I can, guys, I know we probably haven't talked about this. See, one thing where we would probably differ as it relates to most Americans is this, and I ask everyone out there listening to kind of think about this. If we were truly a Christian country, we wouldn't be following this notion of religious liberty as a civil right. Now, I'm not taking away from the reality that we all have free will, right? I mean, someone can choose to be, a Catholic, someone could choose to be a Satanist, whatever they want to be. Everyone has free will to choose. But in terms of grafting it into a constitution and saying, okay, you have a public right to do this, now we got big problems. And this is why the Catholic Church has condemned that notion. It's called Americanism. So that's one of the things we would like to see in this country. After things kind of collapses, we gotta get everyone back on board into a Christian society. So the problem that it creates, gentlemen, is this: if ever, with this religious liberty context, now you have Satanists who can go out and, as a public right, go out and do that type of thing and literally mar society with it. So if we were in a Christian country, I mean, we'll take a look over in Russia. You think Putin plays games over there? I mean, they had those what were those, the pussyfoot rioters, or the girls, and the feminine girls that walk around with their chest. I mean, he throws you right in jail. Like, get off the streets. And that's what I'm talking about. If we were a Christian society, I mean, we wouldn't allow that. So, and then that's where you get into the whole debate, like, where, should we allow to do that? Wouldn't be allowed to do that? But what the church has always said is, once you basically break away from Catholicism in the church, ultimately you're going to keep funneling down revolution after revolution until you literally land into the lap of the Antichrist. So again, we're seeing some good surface signs, you know, with the leadership in this country. I mean, we would like to see things go full blown back to Catholicism, but you know, that's just an area that I would like people to kind of like think about today, because it's truly vital, I think, for our country to, you know, to understand that, you know, error has no public rights. You know, and that could get into the whole argument of the sodomite agenda and transgender agenda. I mean, take a look at the magazines that are coming out and what, you know, they're promoting. I mean, it's just.
What do you feel about the 76 genders that are out right now? The 76 genders, Eric.
Oh, I can't. Is that what they're saying? It is now 76.
I'm just gonna start self-identifying as a Dorito.
Okay, there you go. Well, listen, I mean, you know,
that's what they have out, man. It's no longer man, woman. It's man, woman, LGBTQ, RSTUV, hyphen, ampersand, and it just goes on forever.
Yeah, I know the colleges are getting pretty strict on that language too. Like if you don't talk their lingo, you know, they're booting out professors and stuff. I know I had one professor on. She's an anti-feminist. Her name is Dr. Janice Fiamengo, and she literally almost was booted out of her Canadian college because of that. I mean, she stood against feminism. They actually came in to her talk while she was talking, and they started like marching around the room.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
wow.
like these libtards. I mean, it was just
the generation snowflake.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about. And you know, we got to continue to pray for our leaders. You know, whether you like Trump, whether you don't, you still got to pray for them, folks. I mean, it does you no good to, you know, to sit here and whine and complain on certain things and not pray. And even for Francis, as you know, as Looney Tunes as he is, I mean, we got to just continue to pray, because in my opinion, I think 2017 is going to be a pivotal year.
I pray for George Soros. I'm not going to tell you what I pray for, but I pray for him.
Yeah, Soros, another character, seems to have his hand in everything, from the Vatican, anti-Trump protests, and yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting times. And then, of course, you know, just take a look around the world at Christian persecution in general, folks. Yeah. You know, you've got ISIS, of course, which, you know, many of us we're removed from that. I mean, we don't see that on a daily basis. You go to the Middle East, folks. I mean, there are little girls being raped by these freaks, you know, chopped up, beheaded. My friend Shubat, Theodore, Waleed and Theodore, you know, they've been on my show 4 or 5 times. I was shooting, you know, they do.
We got to bring them on. CJ, we got to get the showbots on, bro.
Yeah, definitely get them on. They'll talk to you for sure. I'm gonna probably hook up with them again in March, but
I'm on it, bro. I'm on it.
They'll tell you all, you know, everything what's going on in terms of persecution worldwide related to that. But it's not even just that. I mean, they're removing Bibles from you know, hotels and places of businesses. You've got coaches who can't even play with their teams anymore. You know, they're getting suspended and fined, and just, you know, then now we have I think there was one preacher the other day in the past 72 hours that was thrown in jail for trying to you know, talk to a homosexual. And again, I've got nothing personally against them, you know, homosexuals. But what I'm saying is we're moving in that direction to where if you try to convert anyone to Catholicism or Christianity, it's going to be labeled a crime against humanity.
But I can talk to you about Islam, Eric, and how it's a religion of peace.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, talk about anything about, you know, outside of Catholicism or Christianity, and that's what we're saying, and that's ultimately the message of Fatima in a nutshell. We're moving out of a Christian society underneath a new Antichrist figure of the New World Order, who, hey, listen, if you don't want to play by his rules, you know, it's a massive clash. We see this. It's brewing. You don't even have to be Christian to see how in the United States, how in Europe, you know, this thing is festering. And then even on the geopolitical scene, you know, you go over there in the Pacific, you know, and they're constantly squibbling back and forth. You know, China and South Korea, North Korea versus South Korea. You got Duterte down there in Philippines talking, you know, smack to us. You know, this whole latest buildup, V and I talked about it a little bit. You know, there might be a little beef there between now and Iran. You know, United States and Iran. We'll see how that kind of plays out. You know, Israel and Iran. I mean, we see in the gospel, you know, our Lord said distress of nations, civil unrest. And, you know, we do believe that we are living in those times, but certainly a lot to consider when we talk about Christian persecution in general.
Yeah, absolutely, man. There's a lot going on. So, Eric, we're on the last 3 minutes of the program. Why don't you plug your site? and your work and how people can follow you.
All right. Thanks, V. Thanks, CJ. And hopefully we can do this again next month. And yeah, you can find me actually on Facebook. If you just search my name, Eric Gajewski, Gajewski. Look for the double-headed eagle avatar. You can follow along there. You can go to TradCatKnight.blogspot.com. You can follow me on Twitter. Search TradCatKnight. And then YouTube, TradCatKnight as well. And again, trying to keep somewhat of a balance between covering the apostasy in the Catholic Church and just what's going on with everything else in the world, from the state side of things, if you will, the secular side of things. So that's pretty much what we handle, V. And always look forward to getting you on the show. And if you see any of the guests on my show that you'd like to to have on your show, just let me know, and I'll get you hooked up with them. Like Shubat would definitely be a good fit for your show.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Eric,
appreciate it
so much, man. Dude, thank you. It's always fun when you and I are always doing a show. It's always a lot of fun. You have a lot of things to say, and we're always feeding off each other, man. Thank you so much for being on, folks. Subscribe to Eric's channel. Check out his blogspot. Great information, great stuff, and it's not just limited for Catholics. It's about having a moral viewpoint. I mean, you got to remember what I think it was Benjamin Franklin. Who was it? Who was the president? Because a constitutional republic can only be kept by a morally upright citizenry. And that's, at the end of the day, that's very important. Thank you so much, Eric.
Appreciate it, Vic. Let's do it again.
Thank you. Definitely. Take it away, CJ.